are so fortunate to be here today with the management team of FluoGuide. In this online investor presentation, we have the CEO, that's Morten Albrechtsen. We have the Chief Medical Officer, Andreas Kjær, and we have the Chief Financial Officer, Henrik Moltke. My name is Thomas Petersen, and I'm helping host this event. We are here today because FluoGuide just yesterday released updated clinical program for FG001. And Morten, I suggest you maybe do an introductory remark, and then I think Henrik takes over with a bit on the financials.
Okay, thank you very much, and welcome to the update here. It was with great pleasure that we actually announced that we now have submitted the CTA, the application for clinical trial for head and neck cancer. It was definitely coming faster than anticipated. Head and neck cancer is an extremely important indication. If we'll go into more detail in the presentation here, so we're quite pleased with that. And then we took the opportunity to give a general update on all our clinical programs as well.
But first, a little bit of the financials. We have also today published our first half-year results, and this is a summary of it. I will very briefly walk through it. I think that what we have had is we've had a burn rate of about 13 million Danish kroner for the first half year. And we expect that will not rise significantly over the next 6 months. It is so that we have a very lean, small organization of professionals, and the clinical trials we are running right now is relatively small and relatively inexpensive, because we have now developed a model with Rigshospitalet, the leading hospital here in Denmark, where we're doing the most of our trials, and we have a really good model up there which work very quickly. The important thing when you're looking at a biotech company is, of course, our cash position. And the cash position is at the end of the half year was about 39 million Danish kroner. And I would like you to add, when you look at the cash flow of the company, that also we have here in Denmark something we call an R&D tax return, which is paid out each November, and we will get 5.5 million Danish kroner there. So you could say that roughly our cash position is about 45 million. I think that was very quickly what I would like to say about the financial report. We do not give any specific guidance on the financials, but we have written in our financial report that the funding is sufficient to meet the key milestones which we have provided in the report. Morten, I think that was what I had of comments.
Thank you. I think actually.
That was financials, and not less interesting is of course how the clinical data are coming in and what we have shown. And I must say that we have highly promising results obtained now in the aggressive brain cancer, high-grade glioma, or the most aggressive ones called glioblastoma. We have shown in 40 patients that it was well tolerated. Only few very mild side effects, and this is one thing. But of course, when you do a phase 1 study, you want to see whether the product is safe, and it is. But it's also interesting to see whether it's doing as we hoped for or promised, namely that it can identify cancer. And here we could show that 100% of biopsies from patients in the optimal dose, and as you remember, the phase 1 study is also a dose-finding study, so you start low, and then you increase until you can see that it's effective and lights up. And here we could actually see an almost 100% efficacy. So our technology lights up cancer, which is just what we need, because it's meant to aid the surgeon in removing all the cancer. And only the cancer. You don't want to remove healthy tissue. So based on these strong results, we have revisited our phase 2b trial, which is really the small efficacy trial you do, and enlarge that or increase that to include 12 patients. And why are we doing this? It's basically because with the promising data we have seen so far, we have the possibility to gain more information of the phase 2b trial if we include 24 patients instead of just 12. Also, the phase 2b trial is different compared to the phase 1 trial in the way that it will be performed both in Denmark and in Sweden. So also more than one site, so it's demonstrating the technology is only working in the hands of the surgeons at Rigshospitalet, but also of one Swedish side. So one thing maybe to come a little bit back without doing it lengthy to the technology is that one of the beauties of FG001 targeting UPAR is that it's cancer specific, but not cancer type specific. And for this reason, we have the option to look into other cancer types. And therefore, we are also looking into it in 3 other cancer indications. And that is something that can be seen on the next slide. Yeah, and this slide sums up the 4 indications we are now in. So the aggressive brain cancer or high-grade glioma, which is where we are moving soon into the phase 2 study with the 24 patients. Then a phase 2 trial in lung cancer that is already running. And then 2 additional trials, one in head and neck cancer to start early next year, and then a trial in meningioma and low-grade glioma. These are also brain cancers, just like aggressive brain cancer, but they are less aggressive. And as you might recall, we did publish a case with a meningioma that was not known to be a meningioma, thought to be aggressive brain cancer, also lighted up. So for this reason, we planned then a study that maybe our technology can also be used in other types of brain cancer. So this is where we stand currently. So 4 indications. Should I continue here?
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Yes.
So basically, this is just showing how far we is. This is an overview. So we have brain cancer, both now aggressive and less aggressive one, where we are most advanced in the highly aggressive ones, which is where we started out, but where we are now working also towards studying it less aggressive. And then comes the lung cancer. This is the non-small cell lung cancer, and this is the vast majority of cancers. That is what people normally understand by lung cancer. So it's cancer with a very high incidence and prevalence. So many patients suffer from this type of cancer, unfortunately. Then we are in head and neck cancer. This is the 6th most common cancer, also a cancer which is quite severe, and a lot of people that can potentially be helped there. It's very complex to do these surgeries, just as brain surgery, so the surgeons really need aid to be guided during their operations. And then finally, not clinical trials, we should not forget to mention that we do not only have one drug, we also have FG002, which is also targeting UPAR, but have some other characteristics. And we are also pursuing that on the preclinical level. And then finally, we are also moving into the dual use of our tracer. Not only can we guide the surgeons by making cancers light up, but we can also use it to heat up those cancer cells that are left behind through what is called photothermal therapy. The FG001 compounds absorb the energy from the laser and heat up the laser, and this is a thing we are pursuing as a therapeutic part of FluoGuide's portfolio.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Now I have just enabled the questions and answers chat box in the lower right corner. And it normally takes a little while before it pops up with everyone. So let me start out with a question And since we have Morten here and he hadn't had the opportunity to say much, I have a question for you, Morten, which I think some of the attendees would find interesting. This is because I have the pleasure of having a conversation with you before this presentation, for example, where I can ask you some questions. And now we have come, earlier today, I was preparing for this, and I saw, when we look back in 2021, there was mentions of breast cancer as something that you would go into. And now we're here today, and now it's head and neck, it's lung, and it's low-grade glioma. And I think it could be interesting for the audience actually to hear about how do you reach the conclusion that this is the right step to make for the company. Is it, made in like a Excel sheet? Is it made on a Teams meeting with someone else? Is it made with external parties? How do you reach that conclusion? If you start answering that question, and then we'll follow up with the ones from the audience.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a large question to answer, but there are basically three sources for us to decide on the indications. I mean, one source, of course, is underlying science expressed. And we know that UPAR are expressed on all the solid stage cancer except the prostate to a large degree. So that means in principle, all indication could be a candidate for us to start with. As you're a small organization, we want to stay lean a while yet. And that means that we have to prioritize our indications. So we started out with the brain cancer, aggressive brain cancer, for two reasons. First, because it was a very aggressive indication, and secondly, because we have a reference point. We have the Gleolan that's already approved in this indication, and we have a reference point that will decrease the process risk in the regulatory process. So therefore, that was the started indication in the market. Then we have selected lung cancer as a second indication for two reasons. One were that it was a large indication in number of patients, unfortunately, but also because the equipment manufacturer are let's say, fighting on which type of equipment would be the dominating equipment used in lung cancer. So it's an indication where all the large med tech companies are present. And then you ask why we come to the conclusion. I mean, what we have in the surgical room is that actually that different indications, different surgeons are using the same surgical rooms. And when we had the brain study going on, some from the other discipline came in and say, hey, how's it going here? Can we see light? And wow, that's exciting. This one we also would like to try. So we have had a quite strong interest from the medical community of what indications is important. And we have as well a quite strong wish from the equipment manufacturers of what indication could be important. So the three things is the underlying science, it's the equipment manufacturers, it's the physician out there that express wishes. And then we have prioritized simple indications. That three large indications: lung, breast, and colorectal cancer. And of course, those all have our key focus. What is characterized with breast cancer is that the equipment penetration is not as large as it is for lung and colorectal cancer. So lung and colorectal cancer have priority for breast cancer, but we will take them all. We just need to take them one at a time.
Thank you. If I may allow myself to sum up, what I think is particularly interesting in what you just said is that it's to a large degree demand-driven from either the industry or practical surgical oncologists.
I think we have the luxury of having a technology that seems to work across cancers because the target is expressed across solid cancers. So you could say, yes, we almost have a waiting list, both from the physicians and from the equipment manufacturers. So that's a good position to be in. And did we have more bandwidth? Of course, we would be even more indications, but we are obviously a small company.
All right, thank you. So we have a few questions that has come in. Let's take them from the top. We have one here. Can you explain in more detail of the new endpoint for the high-grade glioma phase 2b clinical trial? And I think that one is for you, Andreas.
Yeah. So basically, you could say that we will come. The difference is really what we did. First of all, the 2b is in a way a continuation of what we did in the 2a. So it's how correct are we in lightening cancer up. And there are two sides to this when you talk about, there will be, if you look into such studies, you will see sensitivity, specificity, negative and predictive value. And that is because not only do you want to light up all cancer, but you also want not to light up what is not cancer. So there's two parts to it. So this is the core of it. What we did do, and this is of course also the reason that the study is larger, is that we will actually compare with 5-ALA. So these patients do get either our technology or the other technology. So what you call randomization, you are either go to one group or another group. And the difference from the phase 2b study and one study we already did is that here we did both things in the same patients. You could put them away from each other because if you are looking with different type of light, so we could actually see what lighted up and what didn't. But the drawback was actually that it seems from the preliminary data that we are almost free or have very few side effects, whereas Gleolan or 5-ALA actually have some well-known and registered side effects. And when you give both drugs close to each other, it's difficult to discriminate. In the new design where we randomize, so you get either one type or another type, it would be very easy to see differences, for instance, in the side effects, but of course also a more stringent way to compare the two technologies.
Thank you. The next question. I think the meaning here is, would it not be possible to move meningioma forward to the first half of 2023? And I don't have your timelines right in the top of my head, but
well, when we put out the time tables as we do, it's also because we would like to. Right now, there's some uncertainty on the regulatory process with granting permissions, and we just want to be transparent with that risk that we have seen post-corona on the whole. It's not only FluoGuide, but in general, there's some backlogs in some of the agencies. So we could be faster, but we just want to be transparent and just don't want to overpromise, and that's why we put out this timetable. What we can say, particularly with the meningioma, is that this is in the brain. So that is a team that takes care of two things that have priority beyond meningioma. One thing is high-grade glioma, which is our first indication for first compound, first geography. So that has priority over everything else. The second thing is the regulatory interaction that we use the same people for that with the FDA meetings and other regulatory meetings. That is important that we get this on the table in timing manner before going into the phase 3. And then the meningioma study is done when there's some spare time in the middle of it. And hence, that is what we believe. But yes, there could be a possibility that we could do faster. We just don't want to be too optimistic in promising it because high-grade glioma has our priority.
Thank you. And the next question. Will interim data be presented for high-grade glioma trial, that's the phase 2b, and head and neck, like lung? And I think the person asking the question is referring to a mention in the just released press release. Is that you, Morten, who would...
Okay. Yeah, no, I can take that one then. No, there would be no... When you do interim data, there should be a particular reason for that in the design of the study. Otherwise, you're punished by the numbers if you do an interim without a kind of reason for it. In the lung study, we do an interim because we are having 3 doses we are testing where we have a possibility to increase the dose or decrease the dose. And therefore, we are doing the data review anyway, and we could publish those data. So that's why we do the interim in the lung. For the high-grade glioma phase 2b, we will not do an interim. We will do all 24 patients, and then we will read the data blinded to be sure that it's done as objectively as possible. And the same with the head and neck, which is a bit smaller than the lung. There's only 16 patients in head and neck. So there will be no interim in head and neck and high-grade glioma, but in lung.
Yeah, and maybe another way to put it is that even though it was filed as a combined study and now it needs to be approved for the second part, it is 2 studies. So basically, we are doing the second study in high-grade glioma, and that's also what Morten said. And because we already know what the dose to be used is, this would not be a fair way to do it. So it would be much stronger to report it, as the whole study.
All right. Thank you. And now moving on from the more micro-like timelines to the longer-term timelines. How do you see the timelines for the different candidates from now and until market launch? It's a broad question, but maybe you can provide a broad answer, because I am sure that you don't have a specific date for us yet. But please share how you view this.
Yeah, I can do that. Yes. I mean, as said, we would like to get to the market as quickly as possible with our first product and first indication, and that has the absolutely top priority. There's a couple of things that influence the timeline. One of the things, for instance, would be accelerated processes granted by agency. One thing would be the size of the phase 3 program. And for high-grade glioma, the size of the phase 3 program would be determined by the result of the phase 2b. And then there would be the final claim we're going for. If we're going for a more substantial benefit claim, then we can get higher price, faster penetration into the market, but it may take a little longer. So all those things are in play when we decided the timeline. So nothing is really changed to that. We will just do everything we can to push it as fast as possible. I think that's the best answer. Okay. But we'd like to report more precisely when we have the data to be.
Thank you. And next question. Could you expand on what are the changes that you have done to the inclusion criteria in the lung trial? And I think that will be
Andreas. That on the size of the tumor, we had some very strict criteria where we wanted to do it very narrowly, and that has been changed. That's one of the changes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I could add to it. I mean, when the size of the tumor determined, I mean, we needed a biopsy for our study, and the hospital needed a biopsy to diagnose the lung cancer and use it for deciding on further treatment of the patient. So therefore, we decided of a certain large size of the tumor. Now we have reduced that because we didn't want cancer that would metastasize. So we just want primary cancer that did not metastasize, and hence we have reduced the size a little, and that is include the number of patients quite significantly.
Thank you. And this, Morten, you have partially already answered. Can you elaborate why you decided to start a trial in head and neck? But possibly you can elaborate if there are any more details to share about, head and neck for people who are not in oncology. For a person like me, that could be everything. So maybe you can, shed a bit of light on what that actually means.
Yeah, if you want. It means it's
exactly. Yes,
I think what Morten said in a very good way, the different criteria, how we prioritize this. And of course, one of the criteria is also how complex is the surgery, how much. I mean, some surgeries, some cancer surgeries are easier, and you need the guidance less. And head and neck surgery is hampered by being extremely, the region being extremely complex. So you really need guidance. This is one of the things. And the second thing is also how used are the surgeons to use guidance and advanced equipment. And this is one of the regions where robotic surgery that most often comes with near-infrared vision capabilities is already being adopted. So there are several reasons for this being very interesting. And then on a little bit on the more maybe technical part, for us learning about our compound, we will actually with this study look at the subtype of head and neck cancers that is in your oral cavity, so in your mouth. That could be a tumor in the tongue. And this actually allows us without doing surgery, until surgery, to follow how much it lights up. So we can actually get a time activity curve in real time on a patient without doing surgery. And of course, the patient will then eventually also undergo surgery, and the signal will be there. So it makes us, it learns us something extra because some of these tumors are superficial. So that will be really exciting and gaining a lot of information that can help us not only taking the right dose, but also the right timing going forward with FG001 in other indications. So that's kind of an extra bonus of these tumor types.
I could add to it actually that head and neck have the same characteristics than the lung cancer. That a lot of different kind of equipment is used in head and neck cancer. So it means that a lot of the larger medtech companies are interested in head and neck. It's a microscope, it's open field equipment, laparoscope, to say endoscope, so robotic surgery. So all of the different kind of equipment are actually used in head and neck. So it's a very interesting indication for getting in contact with many partners.
Speaking of that, someone is not surprisingly, it's a returning questions in these sessions. With the addition of head and neck, you now have 4 clinical programs ongoing for different indications. Could you update us on the potential you see in partnering, and also if there has been any particular development in partner discussions? I think that you can just continue talking, Gordon. Just tell us.
Yeah, well, we have always said that we believe this will be a medtech partnering that we will have, and what that means is that the optimal time of partnering will be around launch. So we would not put the expectation out high that there will be an attractive partnership done before around launch time, in average. So what we have done and what we still do is that we speak with all the partners that is there. I mean, that's all the partners that have surgical equipment with the visualization aid installed with them, and that means basically all of them. And we continually try to test the equipment within our clinical applications and work with them. And all that is extremely interesting, because what we see, and that was with the IC Green we have used as fluorophore, is that fluorophore is fitting into the light specification on all the equipments around there. So we don't need a physical change to the equipments for being able for them to see our product. And that is a quite dramatic difference from many other of our similar companies like ours, and really an advantage, both in terms of the clinical development with them, in terms of discussion with the partnering, and also in terms of the commercialization afterwards. So far, we have not married with anyone, and we will continue so a bit further.
Thank you. And this ties in nicely to another question that we have here. And what are your plans regarding further financing? And I may add something on top of this, Morten.
Mm-hmm.
So you say that you prefer to have a deal or partnership which is close to launch. And why is that the better way to do it, and with comparing to doing possible further financings yourself?
I didn't say that we will have a deal close to launch. I say that we are most likely, being a medtech company, having the optimal deal around close to launch.
That was my mistake.
No, that's okay. We are always ready to do any kind of partnering that could be done.
Let's go back to the questions. That's here. So, comments on accelerated approval for high-grade glioma. And is that Morten or is that Andreas? Or don't you have any comments?
Well, no, I mean, we can take both of us. We can. We will get an accelerated approval based on data. So we should have, and I think what we have seen for similar compounds that have been approved is 1 patient out of 10 had a benefit. It was kind of the bar from the threshold for approval, but also for granting accelerated approval. So if we can demonstrate that our product is better in 1 out of 10 patients, there is a fair chance that we could get some kind of accelerated approvals, but it will be based on clinical data. And the thing we have decided to is that we need the data before asking the agency, because it's the last clinical trials and CMC that we can accelerate. It's not the first part of the clinical trial. So hence we will take it up with them when we speak with them next.
All right, thank you. Then comments on postponements for high-grade glioma and lung. I think this may be referring to an updated timeline.
Yeah, we announced that we would have the result by first half next year. And the main reason for that is that we have seen some unstable, or what can I say, that the regulatory agencies and ethical committees, some of them have some backlog after the corona. It's not really sure exactly when they're answering your applications. So in order to be transparent, we would like to communicate that uncertainty. It's not mean that it for sure will be end of first half next year, but it's just to say that it may be. And that's why we have communicated out now to be transparent about this uncertainty there is. An example of it, we had 2 indications that was postponed a little in time. On the other hand, we got the head and neck came up much faster than we anticipate. So what you will see, I assume for us going forward, is that when we have multiple programs, in average, we will hit the bar, but there will be some change between the indications for sure.
And maybe it's also fair to say that it's timelines we cannot control, the authorities. So that's the uncertainty. We don't know when we file how long they will take to get back with an answer. So yeah,
this is a best estimate,
Yes.
not a promise.
No.
All right, thank you. And then back to something that always fascinates some of the audience, including myself. So photothermal treatment and FG002 preclinical timeframe. And just to remind everyone, photothermal treatment was what Andreas covered earlier in one of the slides regarding that this component can be used to actually, say it in layman's terms, burn some cancer away. I'm sure that was not the right, correct technical term. But who would like to share a bit of information on this?
Yeah, I can maybe take that. Basically, what is, I mean, we have proof of concept preclinically on these compounds. And of course, that could be expanded, going into specific indications where we see, for instance, an advantage of FG002, and also specific experiments with photothermal therapy. But basically, we sit on data that demonstrates they work. So what is really determining this is when can we push it into a more clinical development. So you would say we are not undertaking a lot of activity right now here because we already basically have what we need. And once we may have funds to move this forward or to have a plan for going into the clinics with it, this will be intensified. So I think the answer is preclinically we have created the data that shows the proof of concept. So it's mainly determined about funding for being able to go to pursue this more clinically.
Yeah, and I can add to it, because of the financial uncertainty that's general in the market, we are a little bit more cautious than we would normally be. A priority is get first education, first product into the first geography, and that's FG1 in high-grade glioma. So that has priority. Secondly is to expand the potential of our portfolio, and then thirdly comes those 2 programs.
Exactly, it's a trade-off, because otherwise, for instance, we would have to say we are not in 4 indications now, but only in 3 indications with FG001, and after all, FG001 is already in humans. So we want to expand there.
Thank you. Now we are at the end of the questions that have been submitted so far. So if anyone in the audience would like to ask some more questions, please do feel free. I think we still have time with the management team here. I can fill in with a bit of a question that I don't understand that no one asked, so I'll do it. And I did discuss it with Morten beforehand, the session here, so I think I'll let him answer it. So now more programs, will that lead to ballooning of the money spending, or how will it impact the cash burn of the company? Because as you know, investors, we are always interested in knowing what's going on with the cash burn in biotech companies.
Yes, no, that's a fair question. Well, that's why we decided very carefully on prioritizing the program. And again, as I mentioned, FG1 high-grade glioma in 1 geography is important for us. And then we would like to expand the program. As Andreas said, we could expand in any cancer indication, and we have tons of other ideas we could put forward. But we would like to be quite focused on the few indications we now selected. That's one thing. Another thing is that our clinical programs are quite cost efficient because they are relatively small, and particularly the patient are not included long time in the studies. So we don't have so many things to follow up with the patient. Therefore, they are much cheaper than general oncology studies would be. So that's why we have selected those indications and prioritized very carefully upon photothermal therapy and FT2. I would say also that we have put in a lot of sub-funds application, so we will certainly come out with good news on those.
That's a good end note.
Could come out with it, yes.
Or you could, okay, could, that's important. So, but you're not going to end on that because we have a member of the audience who asked you a question. Any comments on the poor study results from competitor drug, I would assume, in lung? And I think if any one of you can answer that, maybe you can qualify a bit of the context.
Yeah.
Because not all of us know that.
Yes. Okay. I think that the poor result, I mean, has to be balanced. I mean,
So what is the competitor in lung? Can you
yes, I think that what is referred to is the on-target product, OTL 38, that was just announced here very recently in a conference. When saying poor result, I think when I mentioned before, the agency thinks that 1 out of 10 patients should have a benefit in the procedure. And that, when you think about it, not so many, but not an unfair thinking. So 1 in 10 should have a benefit out of it. And if you can prove that, then you actually have a good result in your trials. I think without referring to the exact result they had, I think what is more of interest is that their product is actually linked up to a certain equipment with a certain light. And that means that they will have some dependency on this equipment that has to be brought out to the centers around before you're actually able to sell the product. So that's very much a PhotoCure-like situation when they first launched their product in the US back in time. So I think that's more of a problem. And for us, it's just great because it makes our relevance higher, and there's still a lot of improvement that can be done out there for us. So we're quite pleased with it.
All right, thank you. We don't have any more new questions from the audience. I'll keep the conversation going for a few more seconds, so there's still a last chance. Do any of you gentlemen have any comments that you would like to add to what we've been talking about today? Anything about, looking forward? That's something that you're looking forward to, for example?
Well, if
yeah, I would just say I think it's having been basically part of it all the way and behind the technology from the start. I think it's amazing to see it now getting into patients and actually seeing cancers lightening up as we of course did foresee or hope for, but that's really a driver, and the possibility that FluoGuide can really make a difference for millions of cancer patients where improvement is really needed, in particular in our first indication, aggressive brain cancer that is both in adults and in children, and which carries such a poor prognosis today. So that's basically, I think, not only speaking for myself, but the whole team driving us every day to make a difference for these patients.
And I will also, like I said that before, but we did it at the IPO. We had this wish and aim that we will show it light up in the first indication. That we succeeded with the excellent result we have in high-grade glioma. Now we have to prepare for the next phase, which really is approval, partnering, commercialization, and we spend a lot of time on preparing on all that, and that would be an extremely interesting rally we are coming out in the next couple of years. So really look forward to it.
All right, thank you. Then I think we are going to, someone is this is a wonderful one to end on, not from me, but from one of the attendees.
Thank you.
Thank you for your interest.
You having been a great audience, then I can reply. Thank you very much. I know that you're always welcome to write to the company with any questions. There's an email on the website. And I'm sure that sometime in the future, you will have a chance to listen once again to hopefully still good news from the company. And with those words, I would like to thank Morten, Henrik, Andreas for attending, all the attendees, and wish you a wonderful afternoon. So goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.